We'll get going in just a minute here. Just want to announce my go live over on a couple of Discord channels and we'll dive in. Sorry about that. Oh, goodness, you're looking at my ceiling. I have not got my head together for streaming this morning. Goodness gracious. Here I am. It's Thursday, September 26th. I'm Rob, that developer dad, and we're building a dotNet based web application. I'm using Blazor for the front end UI, and it's going to help me at my D&D table. And maybe someday soon, if you're a dungeon master that has curious players, it might help you too. So far this week, we've really focused a lot on the UI and making it prettier and so on and all that good stuff. And we're going to continue, but today's focus is going to be sort of a favor to future me, a little gift where I'm going to be looking at the CSS files and how they're organized and all of that stuff. Like right now I've got one that's all of my animations. Here's how we get the cute little sleepy kitty injected. And we've got our blinky kitty down here. And we've specified our animations and all that stuff. I've got my pulse opacity keyframe animations that makes the thinking kind of phase in and out. And I think before we dive too far into what I want to do today, I want to just do a very quick demo of the application. And it's going to take a second to have it load up, and we need to kind of goose the database to make it wake up. But we'll get to look at the cute little mascot blink at us. And there she is. I still don't have a name for her. I was thinking Japiti, but that level of pun is a little bit too deep, I think. But we've got a couple of little abyss kitties living in our house. And one of them is Cinder, and the other one is Char. And Cinder is the familiar for my wife, 9 of 12. And Char, I think, has kind of attached herself to me because she follows me around like a little shadow. We rescued Char from out back of our local bar that we like to spend our time and money at when we're in a spending time and money mood. We were there one night late, and this cute little black kitten was just kind of lurking around the back door and looking in and meowing at us. And we went out and she was all over me. And so she came home with us. This is just a few months ago. And her name is Char. And she looks an awful lot like that Blinky kitty that we just saw. So when we're running our game sessions and so on, my characters or my players are always semi-trolling me, saying, "So yeah, we're talking to the blacksmith. I want to know more about them because I'm sociable, and I kind of want to know more about this person. So what can you tell me?" Well, it's a female dwarf, crazily enough, and let's get some details. And the AI is thinking, and her name is Thalindra Stoneforge. She's about 132 years old. She's 4'3", weighs about 127 pounds, so she's fairly slender. She has a tan complexion, thick brown hair, and wears sturdy leather aprons and heavy work boots. She's meticulous about her craft and has a strong work ethic, and really focuses on the details of what of her builds. Because of this, she's well renowned, crafting exceptional weapons and armor in her very busy forge. She was raised in a family of guild artisans, honing her craft from a young age, leading to her at a fairly young age for dwarves, becoming a master blacksmith. And that gives us an awful lot to play with at the table. And of course, our imaginations can take over. So I'm going to save Thalindra to my collection of NPCs. We'll go back to the list. And here she is, right down here. Now, I want to do a whole lot more with the looks and feel of these things. And yesterday I did a lot of cleanup in the different UI components where I consolidated the element types that surround different parts here and there and so on. And I think it's time to start kind of digging in on how those things are actually styled now that we've got things sort of relatively consistently laid out within within the UI components. So I have open here the styles.css file that kind of governs, I'm going to say 95% of the way the things in the application appear. And everything's kind of lumped together. I've got like my border stuff. The colors are in here. Here's our boxing models, positioning and boxing. And really just everything is all together in here. And I actually am going to start with, we're going to stop the application. I'm running on main, and I've fetched. I got a poll, because I want to get the absolute latest and be working with that. And it looks like I've got one outgoing. Let's take a look. Do I? On main? No. And it looks like I don't have anything coming in or out. Feature quality pass. Here's the check-in. I feel like I ought to sync. There we go. Excuse me. Now what I want to do is I'm going to get rid of this UX quality pass branch. I don't need it locally anymore, and I don't want it to confuse me because it will if I leave it there. So I'm going to say feature / modularize CSS. That's what today's going to be all about. So I can close that down. I'm over on here. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to identify the different aspects of styling that we want to work with. Now, I think to do that, just for thinking out loud, I'm going to use a notepad. So I want to have a what things do we want to define for use throughout the application. And we're going to split things into variables and classes. We'll use variables. I'm going to specify CSS variables and CSS classes to structure different styles. Cool. So we want to define the color scheme, which descends from a palette that is applied to different elements in the UI via CSS classes. We've already kind of defined some element roles in this task host, feature host, and app host. We did that about a month or so ago. And I want to leverage those in defining these, or I want to leverage the variables in defining these classes. Now, unfortunately, in CSS, we don't have class inheritance, where I can say all flex boxes will descend from this set of rules. If I wanted to do that, I'd need to use something called a CSS preprocessor like less or SCSS. But that's not a learning curve that I want to climb today. So we've got color scheme, box definitions, and that gives us controls, margins, padding, etc. We'll have typography, controls, font face, family, font sizing, font weights, decorations, may define special effects used for different headings for emphasis. And we might have some fun if we get through this organizational stuff today. And then of course we've got animations and special effects. We've already got these defined in animations.css. All right, now because this is in my remote desktop window, I cannot pull this off to my other screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a new Apple note. Boop. And I'm going to pull this off over here. And I'm going to grab these, copy, and paste over there, just so I've got them for reference. And let's go ahead. Now here's app CSS. This has all kinds of crap in it. This is kind of defining all kinds of things. And I'm wondering where it's referenced. Is it referenced in AppRaiser? So we're calling out to Cloudflare for Font Awesome Min CSS, Bootstrap Min CSS, Blazor Styles, Cloudflare Font Awesome, Allmin JS. I think I'm going to want to localize those. Maybe. I don't know. But I don't see any reference to app CSS in here. So that's good. Let's take a look at the layout real quick. I just want to make sure it's not pulling any extra stuff in, and it doesn't look like it. Now, over here in app.razor, we can see that it's pulling in styles and bootstrap min and all of that stuff. And then, of course, gametools.blazorclient.styles.css. This thing actually gets built at compile time from any of the styles that are defined and scoped to specific components. So if you remember from the other day when we were working on the component loading, or the content loading component, we defined like the loading overlay ID and the overlay content class and all of that stuff out here in content loading component.css or .razor.css. This, I believe, is what gets compiled into gametools.blazorclient.styles.css because we don't see any evidence of that living here. As a matter of fact, I want to confirm that suspicion. That was supposition on my part, and I want to confirm that. I'm looking at the app.razor component in my Blazor application. I see a reference to a CSS file that is named for the project itself. I don't see that CSS file in the website folder. Am I correct in thinking that that file is created either at compile time or at runtime? Let's see what Copilot has to say. And I'm going to trust Copilot's information on this because Bing is run by Microsoft and Microsoft invented Blazor. So CSS files named after the project are typically created at build time. This is part of Blazor's CSS isolation feature, which scopes CSS to individual components to avoid style conflicts. So that's exactly what I thought, and I got to say, that's super handy. Let's dive in to what we want to do today. The very first thing I want to do is we're going to shrink pages, we're going to shrink components, and I'm going to add a new item. It is going to be a style sheet. And I'm going to call it colors. There's that. We're also going to add another style sheet, new item. It's already picked style sheet for me. Boxes. one more to add. New item. It's already selected style sheet. It has. I'm just going to call it, now let's call it typography. I only have to type that once, so that's fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into styles, and you see how I'm importing animations.css? I really need to get used to this keyboard. At import, and we're going to pull in colors.css. We're going to pull in boxes. And we're going to pull in typography. All right, one more file to create. Add, new item, and it's going to be called baseVars. I'm going to save all of this. Excuse me. Now, all of those guys are going to pull in. I'm going to close app.css because I don't want to be messing with it. Styles. I'm just going to grab this because I know I'm going to need it. And I'm going to move styles off to the right there. We don't need that open either. So here's colors. In fact, I'm even going to go so far as to unpin and move this off to the right, because we're going to be using that quite a bit. Now, typography is absolutely going to need to import baseVars. Cool. And we're going to copy, paste, paste, and you know what? Just to be for sure, we're going to do that. Okay. Now, baseVars, I want to add a comment at the top. baseVars defines values that are used throughout the application's type system. We will set variables for app sizing within the browser window, base color palettes, base level typography settings, style sheet files that inherit or import these values, can alter them into new variables to create variations of these basic values. Now, instead of body, we're going to use a CSS pseudo selector called root. And this is roughly the equivalent of HTML, or selects the HTML tag, but it's actually selecting everything around and including the HTML tag. So let's do app height, and it's 100 dvh. App width, also 100 dvh. We could get rid of these spaces, but I'm not gonna. And I think we should be able to now come over here, and I'm going to comment that out. And the first thing I'm going to do is set the base sizing values used to place the app elements within the browser window. Now, I've seen VH, and VH stands for viewport. Oh, I did that wrong. DW. Is it DVH or DV? Oh, let's go to Copilot. I see a lot of CSS specifying element dimensions in terms of VH and VW. I know that stands for viewport height and viewport width. I've also seen DVH. What's the difference? And what is the correct D version of VW? Because I did notice something in my old CSS. Dynamic viewport height. Based on the initial viewport size, DVH adjusts dynamically as the viewport changes, such as when the browser's UI elements like address bar appear or disappear. Cool. And it's DVW. So I did have that mistyped. So that shouldn't be DWH, it should be DVW. So let's fix that right now. Save that. Save all of these. And let's go ahead and run the application just for laughs, because these style sheets, because they're top level, should be okay. Now this guy, for some reason, used to be in the middle. I wonder what's going on. Let's sign in. And we'll go to the NPC screen. And I want to make sure, I've got a sneaking suspicion that... Oh, no, that's still working right. Good. Oh, but we did make that have to be scrollable, so we've screwed something up here. I've goofed something. I've totally goofed something up. But we'll figure it out. So here's root baseVars. I wonder if I bring this back. Save that. And comment these. Save that change. And hit hot reload. If that'll fix. Oh yeah, it absolutely did. So what happens if I come over here? DWH. I don't want to see if. Wait a sec. Not that edge. This edge is DWH a correct attribute value, and if so, what does it mean? I feel like DWH is just a typo. Yeah, that was a typo. Let's pop over here and DVW. It is DVW, right? DVW. DVH, DVW. Good. Now let's save. Save all. Hit hot reload. And see if that's goofed up anything out here. It is not. Good. I has a suspicion. Nope. My suspicion was partially correct. I put all those files in the wrong bloody folder. La la la. There we go. Yes, move. I will move boxes. Come on. And we'll move colors. Okay. And we'll move typography. Not into Bootstrap, you goon. Oh wait, I probably shouldn't use goon. I think goon has a special meaning for people of a later generation than me. I've seen it used in certain contexts that are whoo. All right. So let's see if I can now uncomment these because they're in the right place. So we'll uncomment those, recomment these, save everything, run the app. Now that all of my CSS files are in the correct places, and that's been recentered the way I need it to be, we'll sign in and make sure my scroll areas are correct. Come into NPCs, and all the scroll areas are back to the way we want them to be. Good. Okay, so we know our linking is working. And when we're making changes like this stuff, we really, really want to do it gradually. As slowly as we possibly can. So I'm going to grab that, this whole block. You're out of here. Root, you're gone. Save. I'm even going to go so far as to pull this up. Right there, so that we can see this stuff side by side. So cool. Now I do want a little bit more vertical space over here in my style, or over here in my code window. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull styles back over here, and we're just going to flip back and forth from one tab to the next. So let's take font family. We're going to copy it. We're going to comment it. We're going to come over to typography. That's in body, right? No, that's in HTML. And I'm gonna, no, let's do this. Font set. Paste. Do that. Now, I don't know if I'm doing this quite right, but let's say HTML font family var font set save and save. And I believe hot reload is here. We should see no change. All right, so Helvetica new, Helvetica Arial sans serif. All right. Let's get currently my app is using the following font family. What other widely installed font classes can I use that look somewhat different to those? Okay, so there's Verdana, Tahoma, Trebuchet. Let's try this just for laughs. Just for giggles. And what we'll do is we'll define it as a second font set. Font set 2. Paste that in. Save. Come over to typography. 2. Save. And let's see if we can do a hot reload. Doesn't look like that did anything for us. What happens if we do a full restart of the app? Doesn't look like that did anything for us. So let's take a look. Let's inspect this element. Body margin, font family, and it says BS body font family, BS body font size. Yeah. So where are those coming from? Host root style. Let's take a look. Okay, it looks like the bootstrap stuff is doing some overriding on us. So, just to fool around and find out, what if, just because I'm feeling silly, we comment that out completely? That's probably going to create chaos. That's probably going to just completely blow everything up. We're going to find out. Oh yeah, we're using a lot of bootstrap styles throughout. But we see so let's shrink that back down. Pull you over here. Whoops, not that one. We'll do this. Now we'll come back over to typography. Save. And try a hot reload. I feel like I'm not referencing that quite right. Control C. Let's take this. We're going to take it to Copilot. I suspect that I'm declaring this CSS variable incorrectly. If that isn't the correct syntax for a comma separated list in a CSS variable, how should I do that properly? Variables don't directly support comma separated lists. In a string, I'm going to use the var function to apply it. Okay. Well, since I switched us back to using font set, let's just do a full reload and see if that brings it back. And it sure did. Okay, so we know that's working. And I'm going to go ahead and leave it with Helvetica New for now. I am going to ask Copilot one more thing. Where can I find a list of fonts that are pre-installed in modern browsers, regardless of browser or vendor, i.e. Edge, Chrome, Firefox, Safari. Widely supported. Okay, good. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, paste it into my note. That feels like important stuff to remember. So cool. All right, so that's working pretty okay. But because we've ripped out the bootstrap stuff, we're kind of losing some things. Over here in typography, A, font decoration, none. I want to get rid of that underline because that looks lame. I think we're going to have to restart. Sometimes hot reload works and sometimes it doesn't, and it's real. The inconsistency is pretty annoying. I don't like that. I don't like it at all. Remove the underline on the text for A tags. Text decoration. That's something that kind of drives me crazy about CSS is sometimes you refer to the font, sometimes you refer to the text, and it's really goofy and inconsistent. And let's do a hot reload. Or maybe reload over here. Okay, good. We got rid of those things. Now, let's take a look at this. Inspect and see what navbar brand. Text decoration, none. Good. And that's a class. Okay, we're gonna start fixing some of these things up. But we got that working kind of the way we want it to be. So styles, HTML, we are no longer applying anything at the we're no longer applying anything at the HTML level. Great. Now, is less still used for CSS pre-processing in 2024? SAS, which has larger community and more extensive features, greater flexibility with plugins. What impact would introducing a CSS preprocessor to my build and deploy pipelines? Are those tools run when I build the application with MS Build, or do I need to run a manually add an external build tool to transpile the less SAS post CSS files into the CSS files needed by my application? I'm really starting to feel the pull to some CSS pre-processing, but I don't want to do that if it's going to make my build more complex. For .NET projects, you can integrate pre-processing tasks directly into the MS Build by adding custom targets to your CS proj file. To use SAS, you might add a target like this. Okay. I could use an external build tools like Webpack, Gulp, Grunt, blah, blah, blah. Don't really want to F with that. Don't want to mess with that. Increase the build time slightly. I don't care about that. Okay, but bottom line, if I add SAS to my Blazor project, will it get processed automatically, or will I need to change something in my build process? Make some changes. Okay, yeah, I don't know. No, we're not going to start messing around with NPM and all of that stuff, because that's going to make my GitHub actions into a mess. So we're not going to use it. As handy as mix-ins might be, I don't want to mess with that. Excuse me. However, what I am going to do is over here in boxes, we've got body. Let's see what happens if I do this. I'm just going to cut that. paste it into boxes. I'm going to save all. Styles importing boxes, it is. Save. And it looks like that broke some stuff. So I probably don't want to do that. Let's put it back. Yeah. Boxes should probably go above color. Save. This is really, really making my engineer brain start to itch. Like a lot. All right. I'm going to come back over to baseVars. Font base size. Let's go to 16 pixels. Now over in typography, I want to make sure I'm doing this right. I want to use a variable to declare the base font size that my app will use, and I've got that part already. Where do I apply that value to make sure the rest of the HTML uses that value when I size different elements using rem? So here's my base font size, just like I typed. and then I apply it just the way I thought I needed to over in the HTML. So I go font size. I gotta type in the right place here. Font size is var base font size. Is that actually what I set it to? That's the name of the variable. Let's copy it. Paste it. Save. Save all. And then we'll run. So now to test to see what this is doing for us, we come over to here, and I'm going to make it ridiculous. And I'm going to refresh, and everything's huge. It's huge. So we'll take it down to 16. Save, refresh. That's a lot more sensible. Now, why 16? 16 is evenly divisible by 2, 4, and 8, and 16. My gut says I want to go to 12 because it gives me the ability to divide into sixths, thirds, quarters, and halves. But then if I do that, everything becomes itty bitty. And on a mobile layout, it just gets hideous. So I think 12 is a little too small, because if I do that, I got to make everything baseline as 1.25 rem. No, that'll give me a 15 pixel base size. What if, oh, body. Font size 1.25 rem. Now that's going to give me a font size of 1.25 of my base font size, and that is going to be equal to 15 pixels. Let's see if that gives us any goodies. So that's a little better. We can still see up here it's not great, but we can come into navbar brand. I'll pop into the CSS here. Here's the navbar toggler. So 3.5, we're actually going to go to 4. Because typically it's 16. 3.5, that's 60. So 12, we're going to go to 5 rem. And 2.5 is 38. The height, it's with 36, so we're going to go to 3.2. Save that. Top is 0.5 rem, right is 1 rem. That's all fine. Navbar toggler, navbar brand, 1.1 rem. That's only 13 pixels. But if we go to 2, that takes us to 24. And if I look in nav menu razor, top row, PS3, navbar dark, container fluid, navbar. See, this is still using a lot of Bootstrap stuff. And I can probably, with a lot of futzing, move this into using the panel, the stacked panel model that I'm using elsewhere. You know what? That method that I'm using where it's based on 12. Yeah, that's dumb. That's not great. Stop the project. Solution Explorer. Boop. Git changes. I made a bunch of changes over in nav menu razor CSS. I'm just going to undo those. Yes. And as much as I like the arithmetic cleanliness of using 12, because it has more, excuse me, it's easier to do decimalized fractions and stuff like that with it. It requires way too much arithmetic elsewhere in the application. So this gives us clean halves and quarters and halves and eighths. So 1.2 works out to about 18, or 1.25 works out to 20. 1.5 works out to 24. So yeah, 16, 20, 24. And then of course, if we need big, we can go to 2 rem. That's good enough. As much as I'd love to have third heights, it's not worth the cognitive load of having to mess with remembering that our base is 12. See, that works fine. And over here in typography CSS, body, font size, we can get rid of this. We don't need that. We'll just roll with the baseline font size unless otherwise specified. So we can refresh. Things should shrink. One would hope. I guess we have to hot reload and then refresh. Hot reload. Refresh. There we go. So let's talk about headings. Dot feature host heading font size. Let's go 1.5 rem. Task host heading. It's not a dash, it's heading. Font size 1.25 rem. Save. Save everything. All right. So coming soon. Okay. Let's sign in. We'll go. We'll pop into NPCs. PCs. Our database went to sleep. If there's a way I could easily detect whether the database is sleeping or not, I'd replace Blinky Kitty with Sleepy Kitty. But that's an excessive amount of code for a fairly silly use case. There we go. So we've got our townsfolk index. It's a little bigger. Create. There's our 1.5 rems. Here's our 1.25 rems. So good. I like that. That works. One last thing I want to do before I call it a session, because we're slightly over time. What's a good way to provide different levels of bold using CSS? I've seen integral values used for font weight. Those don't really carry any semantic context to somebody who doesn't live in CSS daily. Font weight. So normal, bold, bolder, lighter. That's lame. Use keywords for reliability. Okay. For readability, use numeric values for precision. So bold is 700, normal is 400. So here's what we're going to do. Over here in baseVars, font, base, weight. Normal is 400. Font base size. You know what? I don't like the way I've got these named. But I'll tidy that up after. So font base weight, and you'll see what I mean when I say I don't like the way I've got them named. Font light weight, we'll go to 200. Font bold weight, we'll go to 700, which is standard. Font chonker weight, let's go to 1,000. Is 1,000 valid? No, 900 is. And we'll pop into typography. say font weight var font base weight. Just for laughs, font weight var font chonker weight. Font weight var is font bold weight. And I really dislike the way those are named. I'm going to fix those in between now and this afternoon. So we're going to save all, do the hot reload, refresh the browser. Let's go to view. Now this, I want to inspect that element because that looks chonker to me. Invalid property value. Oh, duh. Okay, I like that. So we've got chonker and we've got just regular bold. Yeah, that gives us some flexibility there. But this makes it hard to navigate in terms of both reading them and so on. So I think what I need to do is I need to rename these variables to font size base, font weight base, font weight light, font weight bold, font weight chonker. That way they're organized in a little bit easier to think about way. And for development environments that do provide reliable IntelliSense or autocomplete based on linked files and so on, it'll make it much easier to navigate through our defined CSS variables. So we've covered quite a bit. We've done a lot of tidy up. And I'm pretty satisfied with the progress I've made today. And see, we've already got our headings back to normal or back to a level of normal. One last dirty trick that we could do here is feature host heading, task host heading. Let's go task host main heading. I believe that's the correct selector thing. Let's ask Copilot just to be for sure. Pull you over here. Let's say I've got a component laid out with task host div class equals task host header heading slash heading slash header main heading some heading slash main slash div. Is this the correct CSS selector syntax to style the headings that live inside the main element in a task host div? Paste. Selects only direct children, but in your case, the heading elements are not direct children of the main. Instead, they are direct children, heading elements inside the main element, the descendant combinator instead of the child combinator. Okay. So instead of that, we're going to do this. And what this does, or what I believe it does, is it's going to affect only those heading elements that live inside the main element in a task host div. And for this, we're going to go font size, and we'll go 1.1 rem, and we'll go font weight. We'll bring in a var, and it doesn't like to do those. Font lightweight, font bold weight. I want to do font weight emphasized. And we're going to go with 550 because it's halfway between our base and our bold. So let's grab this. Come into typography. Drop it here. We have fooled around. Let's find out. Now that's pretty good. I kind of like that. I think I'd like it a little less thick. So what happens if we take our font weight emphasize from 550 down to 450? Because I want it only slightly thicker. So we'll do the hot reload dance. We'll refresh, come back into view. That's actually pretty good. I like that. I quite like that a lot. Okay. Well, cool. I think we've made some good progress. We've made some interesting insights in that the names of these variables could be reworked a little bit. And I'm going to take care of that in between this stream and the 1 o'clock stream. I do have to be mindful of the 1 o'clock stream because I've got a call at 2:30 today. But yeah, we're gonna pick this up and carry on this afternoon. And for this morning, I think we call this session a win. And once again, I'm that developer dad. If you're digging this, find me and follow me on Twitch. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, like, subscribe, hit all the buttons. And somewhere in the UI, wherever you're watching this, there's a link to my link tree, which would show you to where you could go to buy me a coffee if you're so inclined, find me on other socials, etc. And yeah, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you again later this afternoon.